don't show up anyway, so.
Oh, that's true. Well, I'm sorry, the handful of people.
Right.
That's a little
They're
fluid,
not even here
but we
tonight.
don't need to get into
But
that right
overall,
now.
this
There
group
was a
is
selectman meeting though, so maybe they're,
involved.
Oh,
They're
they're
all
all
probably over there.
I don't know what's going on
And we,
with them on
if
their
we
agenda,
need
but.
to, we have places that we can go to. The operating
Oh,
budget,
this-
the law,
Can you not get me on?
more negotiations.
I think he was trying to get
Certainly
you on.
gives us a lot more latitude in negotiations. That's
I
for
don't,
sure.
I don't think so. We're not live tonight anyway.
Decide how we want to approach
Was he
that.
trying to get you on the?
Yeah. Get this
Why are you being so difficult?
between the
I'll
steps.
just use my.
Again, we
Huh?
have, we
I'll
have
just use my 3G.
Yeah.
carryover,
But
we have some,
Can't
trust
plug
me,
it in here?
but
Yeah,
we,
we can.
and we've upped our carryover number, as you saw.
Yep.
Whatever we can pay forward in circuit breaker is a good thing,
Here's Kristen.
as we did this year. Remember Carl had accrued
Not too late.
$150,000. That was a one-time
A little bit.
payment toward deferring the budget. Hi, Kristen, how are you? You'll be down,
All the way down here.
you're down next to Mr. Kushakji.
Hi,
This is
Kristen.
odd, I'm not next to you.
I know. You
Nobody will watch
pronounced it so
them.
well.
She did.
You pronounced it so well. That's a
I
pretty amazing.
practice.
So these adjustments are the ones you've already made,
I know, yeah.
Matthew.
So these
This
are
one
the,
goes back,
this
and
is
this,
in
and
the
this is,
preliminary.
this is where Liz is up, right?
And then these are after the preliminary budget presentation,
Maybe
this is
Christine
new.
report tonight or what?
We're putting back that .1 at the
Yep.
middle. We had to
Good.
add
Yep.
and add because of enrollment,
Yep.
okay?
And obviously, these are cuts that are,
These
that
are
are gonna
cuts.
leave our grade, class size in our
Still
range.
within a range,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I have. I know
Um,
Principal Dexter does a lot of we.
Hello.
Really?
Yes.
Teach
So,
Karen.
They just got in trouble last week, so but
Jerry should announce a big budget cut tonight because no one showed up. There's not one
was not
person
starting
from the
Friday.
public here.
Doesn't look like
This
the
week.
number.
Well, during the day they're
I
on.
know. But she's running for office. I mean, there's no.
Are they doing budget stuff tonight?
no, but Bob was with me earlier
Yeah.
during interviews, and he said they were having an executive committee meeting at 6.
Yeah, the seniors
So
are
he
like
left
more
at 4.
low key about it, I guess.
Yeah.
And the sophomores, I know they're not a very good grade at all.
Gable.
Did you get my?
Good time.
It's too bad.
Sorry, I don't want this to be.
Patrick.
You expecting any other administrators?
Just trying to do
Kristen
something.
was on vacation. Should we do Kristen first?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, your PowerPoint. Here you go, my dear.
Yeah, we'll do Kristen first, and then we'll go through the budget, Karen, okay?
All right. My team lost 6-3.
Update we can do afterwards.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
And the self-evaluation, obviously.
Turn on the
Both under me.
I have an undermanned.
You have athletic security anytime you
Yep.
I wasn't sure that you. I'm sorry. Are you going to ask? They don't necessarily have to say.
No, I mean, if you want to elicit anything, feel free to do it if they, members, but I don't intend to, no.
I don't know. Can you get a reception in here?
Yeah, I got 3.
All right,
3
Yeah,
balls.
but
Karen,
you
you all
know,
set?
yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, electronic. Yeah, I'm getting on.
All set? Yes. Bring the meeting to order. It is April 23rd, 2012. This is a meeting of the North Reading School Committee. And first on our agenda is our student report, and our student representative tonight is Kristen Chevlin. Kristen, where are you? Whoa,
Down here.
you're way down there. Kristen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Over vacation, there was a track meet on Wednesday. Unfortunately, we lost, but we have another meet on Wednesday, and we also have state relays this Saturday. Tomorrow, we have Project Purple. Student Council is hosting that, and we also have a mock car crash tomorrow, which just shows the students, because we have prom on Friday, just not to drink after the prom, and especially, don't drink and drive, and it just shows, what will happen. Today in Power Block, students took a My Voice survey. Prom is held at the Hillview this Friday at 7 o'clock, and it'll end at 11. It's at the junior prom. Also over vacation, students went on an Italy trip. It was 9 days long, and they got back Friday night, and they said they had a really good time. Lacrosse for boys had a game over vacation, and they won against Wilmington, and they are currently undefeated still. Next Thursday, the music department is going on their music trip, and they're going to Disneyland, and they'll also take classes down there as well. On May 6th, Student Council is participating in the Walk for Hunger, and they've done this for a couple years now, and usually they get a big turnout. On May 18th, Relay for Life is being held in North Reading. Tomorrow night, there's a dinner for students that were accepted into the RILA program, which is a leadership camp that's also on the weekend of May 18th. Student Council has a conference on Thursday. It's their spring conference that they have every year. 2 Thursdays ago, North Reading held a Mr. NRHS, and Evan Wade, who's a junior, was our winner. AP exams start in 2 weeks, and they'll last like for 2 weeks. And All Town Chorus is tomorrow night at the high school at 7 p.m. in the gym. And also at the high school, there is a college fair on May 2nd.
Thank you, Kristen.
And my student work, it's a little confusing because it printed out like each slide, like each picture. But for my anatomy class, I had to interview a profession in the medical field, and I chose my dentist, Dr. Webster. He's in North Reading, and we basically had to ask him about his job and what he likes about it, and their skills and personality requirements that you have to have. And he was really good, and he really liked his job. You can tell he's always knew he wanted to be a dentist from age 7, and it was really interesting. And we get to present these projects tomorrow in class, and it just helps us to realize maybe we want to go into that job, or we want to go into that profession when we get older. So it was a good project.
Thank you, Kristen. Any comments or questions from the committee?
I don't know about someone who's always wanted to be a dentist since they were 7. I just have some questions about that. We got to get Dr. Webster in here.
What are you, an anti-dentite?
No, he's my kid's dentist. He's a fine dentist, but 7 years old wanting to be a dentist. I don't know. That's
He had
tough.
a story behind it.
Did he have? Oh, really?
Yeah, his dentist, when he was a kid, it would hurt him a lot, and so he would always complain. His dentist told me, he's well, if you don't like it, you should be a dentist then. And from that day, he knew.
Challenge,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
challenge.
No, that's a good
It's into
story.
quality improvement.
Yes.
Kristen, thank you very much, and
Thank
feel
you.
free to, go home and do your homework.
Thank you.
Such a nice guy.
Okay, the next on our agenda, the main purpose of tonight's meeting is the public hearing, school committee public hearing on the budget for FY 2013. We've been working on the budget, as always, this time of the year since January, and we've come forward with a level services budget. Level service budget basically is bringing forth the same services from the last fiscal year to the next fiscal year, and basically that doesn't necessarily mean it's the same funding, because level services usually requires a little additional funding. But I'm going to ask Carl Nelson, Director of Finance, to give a PowerPoint presentation to show everybody how our budget is actually constructed and to further explain what it means to have a level services budget. Carl. Come over this way, right? I'm going to get out of your way, Carl, because
Special effects.
that's a killer.
I like the special effects up there with
That was kind of cool.
yeah,
It was very textural.
kind of a curvy
Yes.
budget.
Curvy budget.
We have it up there.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation on behalf of North Reading Public Schools and the School Committee and the Administrative Council. Our intention tonight is to present to the public some of the details and the history of where we've been and where we're going. I also want to mention that while I'm making this presentation, I do so on behalf of the Administrative Council, the principals and directors of North Reading Public Schools, superintendent, and of course the school committee. What we're intending to do tonight is, after I provide a brief context and history to where we've been, we'll turn the meeting back over to Chair Venezia and Superintendent Willis for questions from the audience. I think it's helpful to understand where the money comes from, because if you understand where the money comes from, it helps you to understand some of the pressures that we've been feeling in recent years while we've been undergoing this economic slump And that pie chart is indicative of where the dollars come from to fund the North Reading Public Schools budget. As you can see, the majority of the money comes right here from North Reading in the form of property taxes. And when 3/4 of our money comes from that single source, you can understand how easily the economic slump can impact the shape of the budget, because when people aren't adding additions, buying new homes, putting in swimming pools, building decks, the property tax base doesn't grow. You'll also see some smaller segments of the pie, and then in red you see state aid. State aid is called Chapter 70. And as we start to think about the Chapter 70 piece, I think it's helpful to also understand how that is formularized. About 19 years ago, the Ed Reform Act was passed in Massachusetts. And the Ed Reform Act developed a set of formulas which determined how much each city and town was going to receive when it comes to Chapter 70 allocations. At that time, it was a major overhaul of state aid to education. At that time, the concept of the foundation budget was created. The foundation budget is the adequate baseline spending that each district is expected to spend. That baseline spending is based on the demographics of your student body. So your baseline spending or your foundation budget is predicated upon the number of special education students, the number of kindergarten students, 12th graders, English as a second language learners. All of the components and demographics are funneled through a chute, and a Chapter 70 allocation is made. This foundation budget process has not been re-examined in these past 19 years, and it's starting to lead to what I would call a kind of a structural problem. When the foundation budget was created and Chapter 70 allocations were determined, it really understated, particularly in this present time, the true cost of services for the so-called high-need students. At the same time, the foundation budget did not foresee the dramatic increase in health insurance that cities and towns are now facing. So what has happened is, when you don't take those two important components into account, the foundation budget recommendations in the Chapter 70 allocations that we get are really less than we need. And the actual impact to North Reading, and about 80% of the districts in Massachusetts, is that the spending for regular education is less than is expected based on the foundation formula because of the top two bullets, the health insurance costs and the special ed costs. In other words, the formula needs to be changed. There's some specific examples of what I've just mentioned. In North Reading, the healthcare costs are increasing at a rate of about 10% a year. There have been years it's been 15 to 20%. And that is, I believe, the single largest component after salaries in the town of North Reading's budget in any community. So when that's going up at 10% a year, you can imagine that that is taking from other things, primarily education. The mandates that are contained within special education has meant that many districts have increases in that and the special ed spending of in excess of 10% a year. So when you have those two major components of budget moving forward at that level, you're faced with having to make very difficult decisions in other areas. And then when you look at the revenue side of the picture, when property taxes are capped at 2.5% and your other sources are relatively flat, you run into the kinds of problems that we've been facing in North Reading and many other communities. And those problems that we've been facing are manifested really by no growth, no enhancements, just kind of a bare bones budget. I think it's also useful for people to have a perspective on what North Reading spends compared to other communities. There's a lot of talk about per pupil spending. Per pupil spending is a set of relationships that determine how much you are spending per child